Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why do I feel older than I actually am? Maybe it's the mornings when you wake up already tired, or those little aches that creep in and make you wonder if this is just what aging is supposed to feel like. I've had that thought myself more than once, and I'll be honest, it can be unsettling. But here's the truth. Aging doesn't have to feel like a slow decline. In fact, so much of how we age is shaped not just by our genes, but by the choices we make every day. And that's actually good news, because it means we have more control than we often realize. Today we're diving into something that affects every one of us, the mistakes we make as we get older that can actually shorten our lives. I'm not talking about rare or complicated issues. These are simple, everyday patterns that sneak up on us. The kind of habits we barely notice until they've been with us for years. And the great part? Each one can be turned around with a few practical shifts. Let's start with the first big one. And I have to admit, this one caught me off guard in my own life. Not moving enough. You've probably heard the phrase, sitting is the new smoking. At first, it sounded dramatic to me too. But research from the Mayo Clinic and other leading health institutions shows that spending most of our days sitting really does take years off our life. It slows down circulation, weakens our muscles, and even affects how our brain works. I remember a stretch in my 40s when my work kept me at a desk for 10 to 12 hours a day. I'd tell myself I'd exercise later, but later never came. And what I noticed? My back hurt more often, I had less energy, and my mood started slipping. It wasn't until I made a rule to simply stand up every hour, just to stretch or walk around, that I realized how much my body needed that regular movement. The fix doesn't have to mean running marathons or spending hours at the gym. In fact, research shows that even light, consistent activity, like walking, gardening, or stretching, can significantly lower the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and even some cancers. One study published in The Lancet found that just 15 minutes of daily movement can add up to 3 extra years of life expectancy. That's the power of small steps. So if you're finding yourself sitting more than standing, start with something as simple as walking around your house during phone calls, or taking the stairs instead of the elevator. These little choices stack up in powerful ways. The second mistake, and it's one I see far too often, is ignoring sleep. Somewhere along the way, we started treating sleep like a luxury instead of a necessity. Maybe you tell yourself, I'll catch up on the weekend, or I only need 5 hours. I used to think the same. But the science is clear. Chronic sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired. It increases the risk of heart disease, dementia, and even shortens life expectancy. The National Sleep Foundation points out that people over 40 who consistently sleep less than 6 hours a night are at higher risk for all sorts of age-related illnesses. I'll share a personal story here. In my late 40s, I was working late nights on projects, fueled by coffee and the belief that being productive mattered more than rest. It wasn't until I started waking up foggy, forgetting small things, and struggling with my focus that I realized something had to change. The shift came when I started treating bedtime like an appointment I couldn't cancel. I dimmed the lights an hour before bed, kept screens out of the bedroom, and gave myself permission to rest. The difference was dramatic. I felt sharper, calmer, and ironically, more productive during the day. The key is to create a routine that signals to your body it's time to wind down. For some, that's reading a physical book instead of scrolling on a phone. For others, it's a warm shower or listening to calming music. Quality sleep isn't about being lazy. It's about giving your brain and body the time they need to repair and recharge. And when you do, you're not just preventing disease. You're adding years of vibrant life. Now, the third mistake is one that's easy to overlook because it doesn't always show up right away. Poor nutrition choices. We live in a world of convenience, where it's easier to grab processed foods than prepare something fresh. But the cost of that convenience is high. Diets heavy in refined sugar, processed meats, and unhealthy fats are strongly linked to inflammation. The kind that damages cells, accelerates aging, and increases the risk of chronic diseases. Studies from the Harvard School of Public Health consistently show that nutrition is one of the strongest predictors of how long and how well we live. I'll never forget a moment I had with an old friend who seemed to have endless energy in his 50s. I finally asked him, "What's your secret?" His answer was simple: "I eat for fuel, not for comfort." That doesn't mean he never enjoyed a treat, but his day-to-day meals were built around whole foods, colorful vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, and plenty of water. Watching his energy and vitality pushed me to clean up my own eating. And the impact was almost immediate. My digestion improved, my energy was steadier, and I noticed those mid-afternoon crashes nearly disappeared. You don't have to overhaul your entire diet overnight. Start small. Maybe swap soda for water, or add one extra serving of vegetables to your plate each day. Replace processed snacks with nuts or fruit. These aren't punishments, they're investments. Every choice you make with food is a vote for the kind of future you want to live in. And the beauty is, your body responds quickly to these changes, no matter your age. So here's where we are. 3 of the biggest mistakes we make as we age, moving too little, sleeping too little, and eating poorly, are also 3 of the easiest to start improving. They don't require expensive treatments or complicated routines. They just need awareness and consistency. And when you begin to make these changes, the payoff is enormous. Not only do you add years to your life, but you add life to your years. If we've already talked about movement, sleep, and nutrition, then you might be wondering, what else could really make such a big difference in how we age? The truth is, some of the most damaging mistakes aren't just about our bodies. They're about how we handle stress, connection, and even the way we think about aging itself. These can be harder to notice because they don't always leave obvious marks, but over time, they quietly shape the length and quality of our lives. The 4th mistake, and one that hits closer to home than we'd like to admit, is living with constant stress. Stress by itself isn't always the villain, it's part of life. But when stress becomes chronic, when our bodies stay in that constant fight or flight mode, the effects are devastating. Cortisol, the hormone released during stress, is meant to help us in short bursts. But when it stays elevated for weeks, months, or years, it starts to damage blood vessels, raise blood pressure, weaken the immune system, and even shrink parts of the brain that are critical for memory. I remember a period in my early 50s when I was juggling work deadlines, family responsibilities, and trying to take care of aging parents. I told myself, this is just life, push through it. But my body had other plans. I was irritable, sleeping poorly, and had this constant tightness in my chest. What finally snapped me out of it wasn't a medical scare. It was realizing I wasn't present with the people I cared about. I was physically there, but mentally trapped in an endless to-do list. That was the moment I realized stress wasn't just stealing my peace, it was stealing my years. Research backs this up. The American Psychological Association has shown that chronic stress accelerates aging at the cellular level by shortening telomeres, the protective caps on our DNA. Shorter telomeres are linked with a shorter lifespan. That sounds scary, but here's the hopeful part. The same research shows stress management practices like meditation, yoga, deep breathing, and even regular laughter can actually protect telomeres. That means every time you take a walk in nature, practice gratitude, or laugh with a friend, you're not just improving your mood, you're literally protecting your longevity. Which brings us naturally to the 5th mistake, isolation. Humans are wired for connection. It doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted. Our brains and bodies thrive when we feel supported and connected. Yet, as we age, it's surprisingly easy to drift into loneliness. Friends move away, kids grow up, retirement changes our daily routines, and before we know it, our circle gets smaller. And while loneliness might feel like an emotional issue, it's actually a medical one too. The National Institute on Aging reports that chronic loneliness increases the risk of early death by a similar amount as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's not a small statistic, it's a wake-up call. Social isolation has been linked to higher rates of heart disease, stroke, depression, and cognitive decline. When I first learned this, I thought about my neighbor, a widower in his late 60s who rarely left his house. When I started checking in on him, inviting him over for coffee, or just chatting in the yard, I could see the change in his energy. His eyes lit up more. He laughed more. And I realized those moments of connection aren't just nice, they're life-saving. The good news? Building connection doesn't have to mean joining a big group or being the life of the party. It can be as simple as making a phone call to a friend, having regular family dinners, volunteering, or even chatting with a neighbor. The important part is staying engaged. Think of social connection like exercise for the heart and brain. Just as your muscles weaken without movement, your mind and spirit weaken without meaningful connection. And finally, the sixth mistake is one most people don't think about until it's too late: having a negative mindset about aging itself. I know, that sounds almost too simple to matter, but let me explain. Research from Yale University showed that older adults who held negative beliefs about aging, things like, "I'm just too old to change," or "everything goes downhill after 60, actually lived, on average, 7.5 years shorter than those with a more positive outlook. That's nearly a decade of life lost, just from the way we think about getting older. I remember when I turned 50, someone joked, "Well, it's all downhill from here." I laughed it off, but inside, a small part of me wondered if that was true. The more I reflected, though, the more I realized how limiting that mindset was. Yes, aging brings challenges, but it also brings wisdom, freedom, and perspective that younger versions of us never had. When you start to see aging as an opportunity rather than a curse, you unlock a completely different experience of life. Cultivating a positive view of aging isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about recognizing that growth and joy are still possible at any age. Maybe that means starting a new hobby, traveling somewhere new, or simply celebrating the strength you've built over the years. When we carry a hopeful, empowered mindset, we're more likely to stay active, eat well, and connect with others, all of which extend both the quality and quantity of our lives. So when we pull all of this together, stress, loneliness, and mindset, we see a theme. Aging isn't just about what happens to our bodies, but also about how we live, how we connect, and how we think. These aren't small details, they're life-shaping choices. And when we start to shift them, even in small ways, we're not just avoiding mistakes, we're actively creating a longer, healthier, and more fulfilling life. When we think back over these 6 mistakes, moving too little, sleeping too little, eating poorly, living in constant stress, withdrawing into loneliness, and carrying a negative mindset, it's easy to see how they add up. None of them happen overnight. They sneak in quietly. One skipped walk here, one late night there, one negative thought that becomes a belief. And because they're so gradual, we hardly notice until years have passed. But here's the empowering part. The very fact that they build slowly means we can reverse them just as steadily. Every choice we make today is an investment in tomorrow. I like to think of aging less as a downward slope and more as a garden. If we ignore it, weeds take over, and things stop thriving. But if we tend to it, water it, nourish it, clear out what doesn't belong, it grows into something vibrant and full of life. Our bodies, our minds, our relationships, even our outlook, they all respond the same way. And it's never too late to start tending that garden. Take movement, for example. You don't have to join a gym or sign up for classes if that's not your thing. A walk after dinner, dancing in your living room, or even gentle stretching in the morning can bring new energy into your day. The key is to think of movement not as punishment or exercise, but as a gift you give yourself. The more you move, the more your body rewards you with strength and vitality. Or look at sleep. So many of us wear exhaustion like a badge of honor, but sleep is where your body does its best repair work. By creating a simple routine, dimming the lights, unplugging from screens, maybe sipping a calming tea, you're signaling to your body, it's time to heal. And when you wake up refreshed, everything else in life feels more manageable. Nutrition works the same way. You don't need the latest diet trend or expensive supplements. Start with whole, colorful foods, more water, and fewer processed snacks. Each meal becomes an opportunity to nourish your cells and fuel your future. And the beauty is once you feel the difference, more steady energy, better digestion, a lighter mood, you'll want to keep going. But health isn't just physical. Managing stress, staying connected, and protecting your mindset are just as critical. Stress will always exist, but the way we respond makes all the difference. A few minutes of deep breathing, journaling, or simply pausing to notice your surroundings can reset your body's stress response. Think of it as hitting the pause button in a world that never stops. As for connection, it doesn't have to mean filling your calendar with social events. Even 1 or 2 meaningful relationships can transform your health. A phone call to a friend, a shared meal, or joining a small group around a shared interest can protect your heart just as much as a good diet does. Loneliness might whisper that no one cares, but the truth is, someone always does. You just have to reach out. And finally, your mindset. This is perhaps the most powerful tool you have. The story you tell yourself about aging will shape the way you live it. If you see it as decline, you'll act like it. But if you see it as a stage filled with possibility for growth, joy, and contribution, you'll live in a way that reflects that. The science is clear. People with positive beliefs about aging live longer, healthier lives. But beyond science, it just feels better to wake up each morning expecting good things instead of bracing for the worst. So let's bring this home. Aging is not something to fear. It's something to navigate with awareness and intention. Yes, our bodies change. Yes, there are challenges. But we also gain perspective, resilience, and wisdom along the way. And by avoiding these 6 common mistakes, we give ourselves the best chance to not only live longer, but live better. Imagine yourself 10 years from now. Do you want to be looking back, wishing you had made different choices? Or do you want to be out there walking with friends, traveling, laughing, enjoying your family, feeling proud of how you've cared for yourself? That vision is possible, and it starts with the small decisions you make today. So if you take anything away from this, let it be this: it's never too late to make a change, and no step is too small to matter. Every walk, every healthy meal, every good night's sleep, every moment of connection, every calm breath, every hopeful thought, it all counts. And it all adds up to a longer, richer, more joyful life. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Which of these 6 mistakes resonated with you the most? Are there changes you're ready to start making today? Share your story in the comments. I read every one, and your experiences might inspire someone else who needs that little push. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more tips on living your healthiest, happiest life at any age. Together, we can build a community that celebrates aging not as an ending, but as an opportunity to live fully. Here's to more years, more joy, and more life, because you deserve it.